Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agritourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agritourism is all about entertaining. But the marketing strategist in me knows that, at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agritourist in you. There's something deeply healing about stepping onto a farm, slowing down long enough to breathe fresh air, work with your hands, share a meal, connect with animals, and reconnect with nature in a way that modern life rarely allows. But what if those experiences are more than simply enjoyable? What if farms themselves are part of a much larger public health solution? In this incredibly thought-provoking episode, I sit down with emergency medicine physician, public health advocate, farmer, and agritourism visionary Chris Barsotti to explore the intersection of agriculture, wellness, public health, and human connection. From his work in ecological economics and emergency medicine to building a regenerative farm in southern Vermont, Chris shares a powerful perspective on how farms can serve not only as places of food production, but as spaces that actively support mental, physical, emotional, and social well-being. Together, we dive into topics like regenerative farming, nature-based interventions, loneliness and isolation, lifestyle medicine, animal-assisted experiences, and why agritourism may be one of the most overlooked forms of preventative healthcare in modern society. We also reflect on our shared experiences in Sicily, the healing power of meaningful connection, and the growing movement to reimagine farms as community-centered wellness spaces. This conversation, and my many conversations with Chris, have completely reframed the way I think about agriculture, not just as farming, hospitality, or tourism, but as a form of care. If you've ever felt calmer after spending time on a farm, in a garden, in the woods, or around animals, this episode will deeply resonate with you. This is Jen Ross, your AgriTourist podcast host. Please subscribe and leave us a review. Enjoy my conversation with Chris.
Hello.
Hello, my friend.
Hello there.
How are you?
I am well.
What's the temperature in Vermont this morning?
Man, uh, it's yesterday. No, the day before yesterday was a glorious spring day. The crocuses are up, the daffodils, everything's green, and then it snowed yesterday. Yeah,
Oh, you had snow.
with
We had
accumulation,
rain.
that's still here now, but it's melting off, fortunately. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, there. I mean,
Today it's cold today
it
here
is.
in Massachusetts. So
Yeah, I think we're going to be in the like 40s today and then warm up again. I love where I live, but there are certain moments when I detest it. And like yesterday, that's one of those.
I didn't
But
realize you had snow. That's intense.
yeah, well, also, I mean, part of it's the elevation. We're at 1,500 feet
Yeah.
elevation, so that um, that's part of it. So
So, how are you otherwise? How is the rest of Italy? I left you and
yeah, I just kind of hung out. It was nice to have unstructured time and uh went back to Andrea's a few times, went and saw some cousins that you hadn't met that were near Pistoia and Lucca. And yeah, that was it was very chill.
Was it everything you wanted it to be, that trip?
I didn't really have great expectations, but yeah, it was great to be there and to get away. It's funny how long it took me because normally when you go away, it takes some while to like scrape off the detritus of work and everything to like, and it took me longer than usual. It wasn't until I came actually to Sicily that I actually felt away. And I think the novelty of that was all great. And but it really exceeded so much of my expectations. I mean, having you there and introducing you to the family and the friends, like that was really great. It was really important, and I'm glad that you guys made that connection.
So, for many people who have no clue, like I talk about you a lot on the podcast. So, why don't you just tell us about who are you? Who are you, Chris?
Okay. My name is Chris Barsotti. I am an emergency medicine physician working in Western Massachusetts, but also have worked in Southern Vermont, upstate New York, for the past 25 years or so. I started doing emergency medicine in 1999 in Chicago, where I'm from. And since I've been here, I've been working in a number of different ERs. And before medicine, though, and this is kind of the relevant, I guess, part of the origin story is
Yep.
that I had in college, I had a Fulbright scholarship to go to Italy, which was great because it was close to my family. And I was studying something called ecological economics at the
Which
uni.
I am so intrigued by. Explain what that is because
Yeah.
I
I mean,
think
this is
that's
vitally important.
fascinating to
It's a
me.
vitally important field. And it's now there are now institutes and faculties of ecological economics at UVM, Vermont, and other places. But back then, there were only 5 places in the world which did it. And the premise of ecological economics is that we need to find a way to ascribe economic value to ecological services, right? In our economic systems now, we don't value clean air, clean water, what the things that the landscape does. And these were academics that were trying to fit those into economic models. And some of the products of it were, I think originally some of the carbon credits, like that concept, came from work that people were doing in that space. Um, and so, but it also kind of blends with agroecology. Um, and so I started out doing that work um, in Italy, and then I went to grad school in Boston to continue. So I have a master's in they're called energy and environmental studies. But then after working in that space for a while, I migrated more towards environmental health, where I was evaluating the health impacts of Superfund sites in New Mexico and Massachusetts and other places. And then decided I really wanted to be a practitioner and like with my hands, and then went to medical school and did emergency medicine.
That sounds like an interesting transition. Like, what inspired you to make that decision? Like, what was it that was drawing you to that?
Well, the drive to work with my hands is something like I think is innate. Also I mean I'm operating from a system like an ethos of care. I like caring for people and caring for things. Um, and you can do that when you're in academics, but you don't have a lot of like that lived experience. And I wanted that lived
Yeah.
experience. Also, I didn't see myself like having a life career in academia. Like the culture, the politics, the economy of academia is, you know, it's not it's not my thing. Which is kind of strange that I later went on to do a lot of academic work and start an organization that was essentially um, academic medicine. Um, so it is kind of funny, but it's nice to be like it's really important, I think, to be able to bridge a gap between thought leadership, let's call it that, research and education, and the people doing the work. Because I find that there's a huge gap between
Right.
frontline and leadership. Um, and you need people that can negotiate both domains, that have experience in both domains, I think, to be an effective bridge so that we can create solutions that are much more practical. And so we can elevate people who are doing the work.
Yep, absolutely. So I want to talk about how we connected and why we connected. Tell us about your place in Vermont first. What magical place you've created as your home, but also, you know, a place for other people to come.
Yeah. So when I moved out, my wife and I moved out from Chicago to this region in Western Massachusetts for a job. We both had an ambition to have a small country house, right? Like a gentleman farm, like an old farm with maybe 20 acres and just have our piece. My wife she has a master in public health and community health. She's now the assistant town director of our region. Um, and and so we were looking for farms that we could purchase. And this was before the crash of 2008. So we had like bought this old Victorian house for like next to nothing in North Adams. And I saw that our mortgages were being sold every 2 months. And then the spec value of the properties was just going up and up and up, such that in 2005, you couldn't find an old farm for less than $500,000. And then it was like, you had to tear down the barn and put $100,000 into it. So it was like, it was just kind of crazy. Like actually, you could feel that you're living in this bubble. Um, but at that same time, we also started looking for land because it was a strange moment when it actually made more sense financially to buy land and build new.
Right.
Um, and so we stumbled across this amazing piece of land that is 250 acres on a south-facing hill in southern Vermont. Like from here, from my house, I look out onto Mount Greylock. I look onto the Green Mountains and the Taconics in New York State. So it's a three-state view, and all but 12 acres is in a land trust. So the speculative value was taken out of it before we purchased it, which actually made it affordable. Like it's still like it was still way too much money for us at that time. But when we came here and we saw that this was available, we're like, oh, we we have to make this happen. And so we ended up purchasing the land, and then built a house and over time built the infrastructure for the farm. And because my wife is an organizer, um, literally as soon the first year we built the house, we built it and we moved in 2007. Um, just the house. And then I think I had a little chicken coop. She had some friends who wanted to be farmers, who moved to the area. They were teachers. And so we set up this lease agreement for them to try out their meat CSA. So we put up some temporary fencing. We had beef cows. Well, they had beef cows, sheep, goats, chickens, turkeys, like everything. And they pastured them and they did rotational grazing. Like this was like regenerative ag in 2007. And it was a fun time. We got to learn a lot through them because they didn't live here and we did whenever the animals got out, which was a common thing. It was
It seems to be. I'm learning that up here too.
um, and
There's a cow in my backyard. I think
yeah,
it's
yeah.
yours.
There's lots of stories. Wild cows of Pownell, Vermont that were here for um,
Missing cow,
right.
missing calf was a story I was told about.
Yeah, yeah. And so we had the farm. Well, they had the farm. They ran this for a couple of years, and then they moved. They wanted to buy their own land, and they moved out to. I think they were from the Dakotas, and they went back. Um,
Wow.
but since the beginning of having this land, we saw that it actually has all this potential for productivity, right? And it's my intention of purchasing it was be able to care for my family, but also for others. Because I mean, 250 acres is like I've never imagined having that kind of land. Um, and 38 acres is pasture, and the other 210 is woodlot. Um, and so over time, you know, we took the lessons we learned from our friends, decided not to get cows because they were big and got out and hard to get in, or pigs. And but sheep work out, and I like lamb, and so we started a lamb operation in 2009 called Longview Lambs, and we were selling to we had a CSA, and then we sold through a cooperative that was distributing our products to New York and to Boston. That was a great business model, but that didn't last very long because the person that ran it was retired. And I don't see anything coming to replace that. And then we're doing direct sales to a few restaurants. Um, and we've been doing that since 2009, to different degrees. Um, and um, and so now we have a small flock that I'm growing back up of Icelandics, and we have in the past year started an agritourism here, which was kind of like a way to gather people around this farm and share like what we have to offer, but also like develop it as we move along. Because we have a vision for this place. Um, we haven't got all the operations figured out, but we're on that path.
So I, there's two things I want to, what is that vision? And then let's back up to you bringing people to the farm and what you noticed as far as the impact, the health impact
Yeah.
it had on them. So, what is the ultimate vision? Like, what is your vision for the farm, your
All right. So
family's
the
vision?
vision for like my farm, but it's not just my farm, but my farm as an example of what I think agritourism can and should be.
Right.
And as grandiose as this sounds, I think that farms that have hospitality, like I'm talking about not industrial farms, farms that actually are biodiverse, organic, regenerative, whatever we call some responsible kind of farming that have some element of hospitality, whether they're overnight stays, day trip, farm tours, education, even like market gardens, right, that have some kind
Right.
of hospitality, that these are actually are all nodes in a public health system that that exists, right? That they have health benefits, and these health benefits emerge just from the process of participating in this space. Um, and I think there needs to be a public health system that is parallel to the one we currently have in the United States, because our healthcare system is profoundly dysfunctional, and incentivized to maintain illness because that's how they make their money. And we have a public health system that is really almost non-existent in so many ways. So the vision is to create a network of farms to demonstrate how this is actually public health infrastructure. And by doing that, by demonstrating when people come to farms, they get these cognitive, physical, mental, and social and environmental health benefits. Um, and I came to this a little bit because I while this contemporaneous with my emergency medicine work, I started a nonprofit in 2017, um, to address firearm injury as a public health problem. That because you know, firearm injury is a big problem in the United States, homicide, suicide, any part of violence. And in the ER, we keep getting these cases where people say or do dangerous things and have access to firearms. And we don't have a strategy for dealing with that. I mean, we are getting one still, but we don't have a strategy. And we have algorithms for everything in healthcare. You know, for urinary tract infections, for falling down when you're old, for alcohol abuse, like all this stuff. But we don't have an algorithm for this. Like somebody who's dangerous with access to a gun, what do we do? And it turns out that healthcare is assigned with preventing what everybody's worried about and what law enforcement does, and they enforce a crime that's been committed. So the prevention side always fell onto us and is super uncomfortable because we don't know what we're doing necessarily. We don't have a lot of power in that space. And we couldn't even talk about it as physicians, as specialists in orthopedics or emergency medicine or internal medicine, because whenever you talked about guns, you went into this political rabbit hole of the Second Amendment. And and so the first thing that we needed to do was to talk about firearms and firearm injury as a public health problem, what that meant. And that meant getting everybody at the table, including firearm owners and trainers. And I am a firearm owner. I have been a firearm trainer for 4-H clubs, um, and created this network leadership organization. So we all started talking the same language. It had a viral moment in 2018. And I worked a lot in violence prevention at that point, and then eventually that nonprofit was merged with another one in DC in Aspen, Colorado, and I've since kind of stepped away from working in that space because ultimately what I see is like what I was seeing in this work on violence prevention is that the gunshot wound was the terminal manifestation of the disease, let's say. That was the end result. But that condition, like almost all the health problems I see in the ER, if you turn the lens and you look upstream to see where did this problem come from, you find all these opportunities for intervention, right? And some of them are really, really simple. And so I decided I want to focus as much as possible on the upstream and not on the condition, the sick and injury care that we do. Um, and this kind of happened at the same time that the pandemic decided to explode here. And uh, I would have colleagues come up here during the pandemic and others
Can
because we,
I
yeah,
ask you a question on
yeah,
the gun piece? I know you've moved out of that nonprofit, but do you feel that the work that you and your team did, the research you did, is it having, has it been implemented in any way? Is it having an impact? I
yes,
know
it
there's a lot
has.
of
No, there's still a lot of like
stuff
hurdles
involved
and
in
barriers,
getting
and
stuff rolled out, but
right.
what do you think? What do you think happened with that, or is happening with that?
So we have a common language. Like we actually are able to speak about this
Good,
in a way.
which is
And there
great.
are, yeah, right. There are also now pathways where there are collaborations between healthcare, public health, and the firearm industry and firearm community. Like finally, there are some bridges between these groups, and I have worked in that space. I did a suicide prevention grant recently, and presented it at the Firearm Industry Trade Association, the VA, the Department of Defense. These groups are also very interested in firearm injury prevention, and now there are people working together on this, which is great.
Great.
It's a long, there's still a lot to do. And the obstacles to progress are still there. People, media, and politics make money off of tragedy and things that upset us, and so that is a driver that I can't fix. Um, but you can work around it, and that was like the whole point. Like to like let's find some ways to engage with each other and do something constructive despite um, what we've got in society right now.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So COVID came.
So COVID came, and my farm was like, a safe place to hang out, right? Because we could social distance. And when I had people here, we inevitably ended up working in the garden, in the woods, doing trails with the animals. And I saw like this resilience, like this. It was like more than like, yes, we were desperate to hang out, and people hung out all the time, right? But it was more than like, okay, we're having a picnic. There was like something more that I saw happening, right? And obviously, Dr. Heal Thyself, I live on a farm because I find it good for me, right? But seeing how this also translated to other people and how it created joy and wellness in them, I thought, well, this actually is a really good thing. And so I kind of like took my ER doctor perspective and then my public health perspective, and I'm like, It's like, well, there must be some research on this, right? There must be some science to say that agritourism has public health benefits. And I did this search, I couldn't find anything. I found like three articles. And I thought that was strange. But then I look at the references of the articles, and then like I find like there's this whole world of nature-based interventions, which are like horticultural therapy, apiary therapy, equine therapy, things like forest bathing, which I had never heard of before. This is like a couple years back. Um, and there's a ton of evidence out there, good evidence showing association between positive health outcomes and green space exposure. Like working with your hands in a green space with other people has discrete and measurable mental, physical, social, and environmental health benefits. And so it's like, okay, then, but like, how we are in healthcare, public health is very fragmented, right? Um, and so, uh, you know, so I see that there is the potential for like these farms with a little bit of education intention that they can actually administer those health benefits because they're already doing it, right? It's not like you need to do something different. You just need to essentially define what is emerging from your space with your guests. And one of the things too, like there's and I'll share some of the references in the show notes. Um, but the former Surgeon General wrote an advisory in 2024, 23 about the epidemic of loneliness and isolation in the United
Yep.
States,
Yep.
which is like profound because like in the ER we see the underbelly of society, right? And we've been coming apart for decades, more and more isolated. We saw that with the social media. But the nice thing about this advisory is that it was meant for the general public. So it explained, hey, we're more isolated. These are the health benefits and the health consequences and the health damages of being isolated. So the science was there. And then in there that he wrote like a pathway and identified six pillars on what we can do to come more together. And I'm looking at his advice. I'm like, oh, this is like agritourism. This is agriculture, right? It would check every one of those boxes to kind of create a distributive public health system. Um, and so also kind of like to put a placeholder on that, I started looking at these other domains of medicine. So I practice allopathic medicine, which is like standard, medical school training and sick and injury care. But then there's these other domains of healthcare, which are functional medicine, integrative medicine, lifestyle medicine. There are others, right? But
It's a lot.
right.
And it's very confusing, but it's very confusing for us
Oh yeah,
to
could just be me. Like
understand.
like I didn't know what I didn't
Yeah.
know what was the difference between functional, integrative, and lifestyle medicine until December when I took a really short foray at one of these high-end luxury spas in the region that practices lifestyle medicine, which is a thing. Like there is an American Academy or College of Lifestyle Medicine, and
Yeah.
so essentially what they're talking about, and this is like very much the influencer space, what they're talking about is essentially wellness. It's like it is, you know, good nutrition. It's the six pillars are, good nutrition, restorative sleep, physical activity and functional movement, avoidance of toxic substances, and then social connection. And it's like, well, all that happens like on a farm with agritourism, as we've experienced and we were in Sicily, right? Right. And and so to me it seems like, all right, there are so many paths that are developed. I think that we can create a structure whereby all these farms that have hospitality can qualify as wellness if they just have a little bit of intention, a little bit of education, and saying, hey, when you come and you work on our farm, and we do, let's say, Highland cattle, right? And you interact with your guests combing these Highland calves, which is a really great experience. That's like trauma-informed care. That's animal-assisted therapy. You're already doing it. Let's just name it. And let's give a little bit of guidance so your guests know what they're getting so that you can all sit around the elephant in the room and celebrate that.
Excellent. So, where are you, like, what are your next steps with this?
So there's parallel tracks. So with our farm, I actually just finished our website. We had a website that I took down because it was just a CSA sort of thing, and a little bit informal stuff. And we're going live with a new website in the next week. We have been hosting here. It's been just by internal references, um, and I'm developing a curriculum essentially that catalogs what you get when you come to my farm. Like here are your opportunities for activities, and then this is how we translate those activities into health and wellness, right? Because on my farm we have animal assisted therapy, we have horticultural therapy. Wait, I got to pause on that. Animal assisted therapy, horticultural therapy. These are now, I guess. Uh, I guess I can't say I do that because these are specialty organizations that there's the Society of Horticultural something and Animal Systems. They're their own things that have uh, credentialing pathways,
Right.
right? So that you can say you're a horticultural therapist or as an adjunct to your therapy as a social worker and so forth. Um, one of the things that I did in the last couple of years is like a meta-analysis of like what is all the data out there on nature-based interventions, right? Which include animal assisted therapy, and what is really the minimum effective dose that people need to receive those benefits. And so I see what is very similar to what is described in the literature on animal assisted therapy and horticultural therapy as being possible to farms with just a little bit of input, a little bit of intention. So, so on my farm, for example, we have diverse gardens, we have pastures, we have forests, and we have animals. Um, and I interact with people who come here as like a host, but also as not as a clinician, but as an educator. That when you come to this land, there are these opportunities for you to engage with the land and the creatures on it. You can potentially receive these health benefits from those interactions. Here's the science why. Here's the intention. Go forth and prosper. And that's it. And so that is kind of what I'm developing here for our farm as a model, but also then reaching out to other farms that have similar offerings and similar intention, so that we can develop a base of anecdotal case reports to show, hey, there's a benefit here. This family came here and over time they experienced these positive outcomes. Great. Because I see this as probably one of the most transformative and easiest public health infrastructure that we can do in our country. Not just in our country, but like everywhere.
That's big.
I know.
I love it. But it's big, it's ambitious. But it's in
Yeah.
a way, it's all there. It's happening already.
Yeah, I'm just
It's just
describing what's
framing it.
yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
describing it, and we don't need to like get into the weeds of credentialing or, because that's what happens with everything in medicine. So like of these three, okay, there's allopathic medicine, which is what I do, but then there's this functional medicine. They have their own society, and then lifestyle medicine has their own society, and blah blah blah, right? And then you have the Society of Horticultural Therapists and the Society of Animal Assist Therapists, and like like everything has now become like its own certifying thing, right? When to me it's just like it's all here. Like we can just we can just do this.
Yep.
Um, and and what I hope to do is just a demonstration project. And in part of like, and one of the things that I'm doing, and it's not on our website yet, but I'm going to develop that is essentially a reference library that kind of describes literature that shows how much time in nature leads to what benefits that are positive, and what how do you manage that? And one of the most important studies that I found was from and like this is a study that I'm going to put on I'm going to create on our website also a library so that people can access it and realize I'm not making this stuff up. that, 120 minutes in the woods or in nature is what you need to start receiving benefits. And so it's like, wow, that's all you need. Um, and so part of the work now is like I've done a meta-analysis of all the nature-based interventions. These are what these are called, to try to find what is the minimum effective dose. Like, how much do you need? And then let's see if people are better, right? This is all like, this is just what you do in medicine and public health, more informally, but um, I think the benefits of nature have been proven. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to give people agency to do it.
So your place has been available, but now you're more formalizing it.
Right. So I
Yeah.
did some case studies, so to speak. You know, with
I want to
informal,
be a case study.
yeah, you're welcome. Um, so the vision here is like, so I now have infrastructure to offer different things that are horticulturally, animal, forest, etc. Um, and and kind of like behind that, create a very small, simple curriculum, just so that people can say, you come here, you can expect these to have these experiences.
Right.
These experiences are associated with these positive health outcomes. We're not going to be measuring people prospectively over time to say that, okay, we've shown you, we know that we're going to measure that you've achieved these health benefits. We just know that it exists, right? But just giving people the information and giving them the agency to go forth and enjoy and prosper. Um, and so, so that literature review is still ongoing, and I'm going to make those available kind of on the website, but also kind of create a form and try to find out, okay, what am I doing on my farm, right? But what are others doing on similar farms, right? Because I don't have everything. I have a lot, um, but I think that we can knit with a few farms, we can knit together a pretty comprehensive evaluation that look, just this is what it means to participate in agritourism that has an intention on health, right? Um, and and I think that actually is ultimately that's a driver that is good for the people who are hosting it, the people who are guests, the communities that they participate in. And I think over time, somebody can measure health outcomes, but that's a much bigger issue. But I think we have enough evidence right now that we can just go.
Well, that's the thing, and I think this is an amazing opportunity for a farm to to I guess I don't know what the word is to
You're a center moment,
describe what they're offering in a little bit more powerful way. You
right?
know, like when
Like
we were in
agritourism,
Sicily, speak about that. I mean, you visited, that was your first time to Sicily, right?
first time in Sicily, yeah.
Which I was shocked. You've been to Italy so many times.
I know, but Sicily's kind of far from where my family is, so like,
So you came down to Orto and Festa and met John Franco and Nino and the
right.
family.
That was
What were
fantastic.
your thoughts? Talk to me about your thoughts about the farm and then how it relates to what what you've been looking at.
So that farm is like, I was just impressed by just how it was like a hive of bees, just how busy and full and rich it was, right? And it wasn't chaotic by any stretch. Like all these moving parts, but there's like they're all tied together in a very coherent and natural way. I mean, they draw people in, right? Um, so that's attractive. It's a very life-giving place. Um, and and so, as someone who does, clinical medicine and public health and agriculture, uh, I saw how what they're doing checks so many boxes of in the domain of health. Which is great because I'd love to be able to work with farms to like, hey, what do you do as a farm? Let's translate that into health, and let's create some metrics that you can maybe follow in that, to as a validation. I don't think we need much validation. Like seriously, I think the proof is out there. We just need to name it so that
Yeah.
people can say, oh, I am participating in this, and therefore I'm getting these benefits. I think it's really that simple.
It's really that simple, but what do you think? I guess what are the what do the critics say, or the people who challenge this say?
Oh man, so that can go into like that's a long sidebar conversation. You know how much stupid stuff happens in medicine like right now? Like on, on like treatment and like everything has got some kind of internal bias, right? Because of the funding stream, because of population selection. I mean, there's ample evidence right now to show that nature-based interventions have benefits. Our science is way too restrictive to measure the outcome of a single intervention. Like we're not like, there's too many variables happening on a farm to isolate. Okay, so it's funny. I saw this. I went to this one conference um, on uh, care farming, and because all right, so now we
We
have
had a whole conversation about that.
right.
So yeah, let's just kind of touch on those different terms.
Yes. Okay. So we have like, all right, we have in medicine, we have allopathic medicine, homeopathic medicine, we have all these different things, functional medicine, blah. And then and this is a world I just got to know in like the last couple of years.
Yep.
Uh, well, the medicine side I knew kind of, but then there's like on the care farming side, there's care farming, there's horticultural therapy, there's apiary therapy, equine therapy, all these like nature-based interventions. And each one is trying to create their own silo because we are certified specialists in XYZ, right? Which is the same thing we do in medicine. I'm a specialist in A, B, and C. Um, and so care farming is a way of my understanding of care farming. I'm not a care farmer. I'm not an expert in this, but at what I've learned about this is essentially structured farms that bring in people who have specific often neurological or cognitive uh, problems or disabilities or limitations, and then they work with animals or on farms as a way of treatment, right? And this is something that is much more established in Europe. And there's tons of good reasons why this is an effective way of treating people, right? Because there's the motor, there's the cognitive, there's the behavioral. So it's a great thing. And so, um, but anyway, so care farming is one of these domains of activity that overlap essentially agriculture and health. Um, and it's like they're becoming a society of some kind, so you can join it. But I'm trying to phrase this in such a way that distinguishes what they do from what I think I'm talking about, which is a much more kind of generic uh, approach. So, like we don't need to be like just because you're giving care for people on your farm doesn't mean you're a care farm. Care farm is something else. Um, so I got a little bit lost there in the weed.
Well, I mean, it sounds to me like care farming is
Right,
very targeted to a very
right,
specific audience
right,
who there's a special need there
right,
and very specialized, you know,
right.
I don't want to say care that's given. That's the wrong word, but it just seems a little bit more targeted. Whereas
Yeah, it's
what
it's much.
what you're, what you're talking about, I don't want to say it's the average person, but it's in a way it can be any one of us can get a benefit.
And yeah, we do. It's like it's all. I mean, so much of this is recognizing. Oh, there's an elephant in the room. How about that, right?
Yeah.
And like I am like part of that situation. So there's a lot of like when I'm being trying to be conscientious of is not stepping on toes because there are certifying bodies now
For everything.
for everything. Okay. Um, but anyway, there was a so and what I'm describing here and what I'm trying to like move forward with is essentially a social agrarian movement of sorts, right?
Okay.
That, that gives people language to describe what they're already doing, right? And how that relates to health.
Right.
Um, and and what they can legitimately say are the potential health benefits of what they do. Like we could, if there was funding for this, which there isn't very much of, you can measure prospectively how people interact on care farms. And I'm sure there's probably some studies out there. They're just the quality
Yeah.
of the studies is limited because you can't control for all these things. There's too many variables. Um, but what we're talking about is how participating in normal agriculture with people and animals and nature has discrete health benefits. And this is how we can describe them. And this is how you can take advantage, how you can avail yourself of them.
So I want to go here because, and let's see if we can get figure out this conversation because it's so let's just take equine therapy as an example. I mean, there's obviously many, and the reason I know this is one of my friends is was exploring all the different programs out there.
Right.
Um, and what do I get certified in? You know, very expensive programs, and it's actually been prohibitive for her to even execute on it. But she's so interested in it, and she has this connection. So, but if you're at if I'm going to a farm and they have horses and I'm just going to brush a horse that day, I'm going to, you know, that aspect in a way, is that a form of equine therapy?
I don't see why not. I
But
don't
that's
see,
what I'm saying. Like, does it have to, like, it's this thing where, like, just, you're experiencing a horse, you're connecting with a horse, it's calming, it's
right. I think
therapeutic
that,
in a certain way. So how do you, but probably can't say, you're not saying it's equine therapy, but it's
right. It's
an
like,
aspect of it.
right. So my understanding again, like,
And I'm just taking that as an example.
right.
There's obviously anything you could, any interaction that you're probably describing in your own farm could be a form of some of these certifying therapies that are out there. But at what point do you
Right.
have to be quote unquote certified for it versus just it being okay to talk about that interaction as therapeutic or health,
Well, so
helping your health?
that's a layered conversation.
I know. I just,
Right.
it's the one though where
Right.
is that where it can get into, like, is that where it
Well,
can get troublesome?
so this, I guess that what I see happening in the space of, equine therapy and horticultural therapy is like they're going the same route as medical specialties, right? So they want to, this is our domain of activity, this is our science, this is, right? What I'm actually focused on, what's the minimum therapeutic dose? What is the minimum
Right.
effective dose of what you're doing that so we don't have to call that therapy?
How do you figure that out? Like,
I mean, my approach, you just do it. Right? You just like, but it's informed, right? So I've done now like I've done a lot of evaluation of of the meta-analyses and studies on equine therapy, horticultural therapy, right? A lot of these things are just usual and customary thing to happen on a farm.
yeah,
That's shepherded by
yeah,
a guide, right? Um, and so I'm not going to call myself an equine therapist, even though I have horses, and when people come here, they interact with the horses, and they are demonstrably better for it, right? Um, or they come and they walk in the woods, and we're not going to call that forest bathing, but there you go, a mindful walk in the woods. So a lot of what we do here is to, I guess, democratize health in agriculture, right? And just name what people are doing. That's good already. And I think that we can define the minimum effective dose, right? Like this one paper I mentioned that, it was 120 minutes in the woods was what resulted in somebody's benefits. And I will, so on our website, I'm going to create this research library, but also um, I can share that in show notes as well. But so many of these, uh, it's like the medical specialties. Once upon a time there was like a cluster of specialties, and now there's more, and there's fellowships, and you got more and more specialized. And I see a lot of that happening as well. And then it becomes like a turf war and between the organizations when really it's like there's so much of this is just all it needs is attention and awareness, and you can receive the benefits of that,
Yeah.
you know. And I see that when I've had my colleagues come here who are like seriously, like a lot of them are seriously traumatized people, being surgeons and emergency physicians. And I've had some patients of mine come here, and like the change is transformative. Just the health benefits that just happen from you participating on a farm in nature, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I don't think anybody can own that space exclusively. Um, I think it just needs like the right structure and intention. And then let's call this open access.
Yep. So if I'm a farmer, and I'm doing some of these things, like, can I talk to you about like how can you help other farms?
So I would love that. I would actually I hope to be able to uh, kind of create a compendium of sorts of case examples of where farms engage, good farms, right? We're not talking about like the massive industrial farms uh, of the Midwest, and those are often the antithesis of health. But uh, I think that there are a lot of farms that are they're doing good activities um, that are already doing this. It's just a matter of fleshing it out. And so what I'd love to be able to do is to create a cohort or a case series, let's say, of farms that are doing these practices that have some measurement of hospitality. And let's then talk about what health benefits they're offering, because they're offering health benefits.
Right,
They probably are uncomfortable about saying we offer these health benefits because they're not health practitioners. Some of them are, some, aren't, but it's not a recognized, it's not care farming, it's not horticultural therapy, but it's like it overlaps with that, right?
right,
Um, so I would love to work with farms that have good practices, whether they're organic or regenerative or whatever those words mean, right? But just good, healthy farming that's not a lot of inputs, that have some component of hospitality where they share their experience with people. And I like to understand what they're doing, because I think we can write a case report or a case example of what you're doing is actually public health.
excellent. I like it. So okay, so when's your website? When is this going to be integrated in your website?
So I'm going to be finishing the website in the next 2 days, I think.
That's very specific.
Yeah, no, I've
So by
been
the
working on it
time
for
this
like,
launches, it
yeah,
will
it'll be
be
live.
up. Good,
It'll be
excellent.
up. And we have an agri-tourism offering. Um, and we're still trying to figure out like the capacity, because like we have kids leaving the house. So we have more capacity. Um, and but also kind of like developing the programming, which is not that much, but also it's the language and how
Yeah,
this is done. But also I'm looking earnestly for farms to who have good agricultural practices, um, ethical agricultural practices, who also have some degree of hospitality. And I'd love to see what they're doing and help them translate what they're doing into health, right?
right,
Because a lot of this is intuitive. It just needs a name.
right,
Like, I mean, I've been to some farms, and I would talk to the farmer how they interact with their animals and their guests. And I'm like, do you know when you're doing trauma-informed care? Like that's what you're doing, right? And so as a public health and health practitioner, I kind of know the language and I can recognize what they're doing. So let's like, I'll be happy to share my contact information, but I'd love to work with farms that recognize their value as health providers, right? As health givers, as environmental provider, whatever. Um, to understand, okay, what you're doing, let's translate what you're doing into health. And like in like a very reasonable way. We're not going to go out on a limb and say you're an apiary therapist now because you have bees, right? Like these are all like their own now specialty things.
Right.
Like I'm not an equine therapist, but when people come here and equine horses,
But
they're getting
that's,
therapy.
it's important. I think that's going to be your fine line. There's going to
Yeah,
be that fine line there, and that'll need to be figured out. But I think it is so important to define these, like to get that out there. I mean, I think a lot of farmers don't even, like you said, they don't even realize what they're
right.
doing. Like you said, they didn't know they were.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, they wouldn't even know to ask that question. That's why I think this conversation is so important because it hasn't been framed this way. Yes, in the specific therapies, it's been framed this way, and if there are farms that are just focused on those therapies, but the quote unquote other farms that are doing a lot of different things on a normal basis, and
Right.
have have all these agritourism components, whether it's tours or actual hospitality on premise or whatever it is, they're not thinking in this terminology.
Right. I think it's like, and it's like just it's describing like what already exists,
Yep.
and it's putting the language that I think is recognizable to some people. But as like maybe you got a sense of as I started to explore this space of agriculture and nature-based interventions, like there's a lot of landmines out there. You're gonna like trip on a wire and you're gonna upset some group of people. And I'm trying very hard to avoid all that. But at the same time, is like, let's just identify what's common here, right? What's the low-hanging fruit? Because everyone who is practicing good agriculture that has some hospitality is essentially offering health benefits to people, right? And it doesn't need a specific name. Let's just name what you're doing.
Yep.
And what is the minimum effective dose for you to say, yeah, people come here and they're better for this reason,
Yep.
right? It's not, you don't need a medical license, you don't need a specialty, you don't need a certification. This is just usual and customary stuff that happens on a good farm. And once you kind of look at it and frame it, then you can call it for what it is, which is public health.
Okay. I love it. I'm excited. I'm
Right.
excited to see your website. Um, so you're going back to Italy soon in a
Yeah, I'm
month
going
or
back for
two.
my goddaughter's wedding.
That should be so excited. It's like exciting. In June, back in Italy. Perfect
Right.
time. Expensive time, the perfect time.
Yeah, so I bought my tickets as soon as we got home.
Yeah.
Like,
Smart,
yeah,
especially now.
my daughter's coming with me. But yeah, it's gonna be wonderful. Times are weird right now in the world. Um, it's uncomfortable, but
Yep.
uh, but we have to persevere as humans
Exactly.
and keep giving the good example of this is how you model behavior. We're nice to each other.
Exactly. Well, Chris, this is exciting. I'm excited for you. Um, I think you've pulled a lot of aspects of your career and learnings and travels together and home
Yeah.
together into something really powerful and impactful. So,
I hope so. I hope that this is just the beginning. I think that I see that what I'm doing is not that complicated. I'm giving it structure, right?
yep.
Uh, and then in that structure, giving permission for other people to do that. Um, I think that this is the way that the lowest impact, whether the easiest way forward to to grow health, community, um, and something positive
Yep.
for a world that needs that.
Desperately. I hope our AgriTourist podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. Visit us at agri-tourist.com. Until next time.